By the time my daughter called to say, "Dad, just send the gift. Please don't come," I was already 276 miles into a 300-mile drive. I had rehearsed our reunion the entire ride. I'd imagined her smile softening, my granddaughter running into my arms, the smell of cake and balloons in the air. But now I was parked on the side of the road, the gift box still on the passenger seat, wrapped, unopened, and suddenly unwanted. Inside that box was more than a toy. It was a teddy bear I'd given Emily when she was 5. I kept it all these years, hoping one day it could belong to her daughter. But apparently, my presence was more offensive than my absence ever was. 20 years ago, I missed her birthdays. I missed her prom. I missed her wedding. And now, even as I tried to make amends, I was still the man standing on the outside, looking in. But what shattered me wasn't her rejection. It was the reason behind it, something I wouldn't learn until the moment I left that bear on her doorstep and turned away. What happened next changed everything. This is the story of a man who waited a lifetime for one hug, and the secret that nearly kept it from ever happening. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because this journey isn't just about forgiveness. It's about what happens when a forgotten father becomes a hero in the most unexpected way. My name is Robert Whitaker. I'm 65 years old, and I've spent more of my life alone than I'd care to admit. These days, I live in a small town in Wyoming, in a 2-bedroom house that's far too quiet for the echoes that haunt it. I used to fill rooms with blueprints, contract bids, and the sound of pouring coffee at 3 a.m., the symphony of a man who believed that hard work could outrun heartbreak. I was a civil engineer for over 3 decades. I built bridges, rail lines, and office towers across the Midwest. I was good at it, maybe too good. I took on projects no one wanted, stayed late, traveled further, said yes when everyone else went home. Every milestone I reached in my career seemed to come at the cost of something else. Mostly time, mostly family. My ex-wife, Sharon, used to call me a ghost with a paycheck. She wasn't wrong. When Emily was born, I was already knee-deep in a federal infrastructure contract that kept me on site 6 days a week, sometimes in another state entirely. I tried to be there in my own way, mailing gifts, calling at night, making promises I didn't always keep. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd make up for it later. But later never came. Not in the way it should have. Emily was 6 when Sharon and I split. We didn't fight over custody. Sharon didn't want to move Emily around. I didn't want to disrupt her schooling. And if I'm being honest, I thought staying away would somehow cause less damage. I convinced myself that financial support and space were enough, that loving from afar was still love. Maybe it was, but it wasn't enough. Over time, calls turned into texts. Then texts turned into silence. I watched Emily grow up through social media photos when I could find them. Birthday cakes I didn't bake. Milestones I wasn't there for. She graduated high school with honors, went to college out of state, got married at 27. I wasn't invited to the wedding. I used to keep a file, photos, letters I never sent, birthday cards returned to sender. I kept telling myself I'd find the right time, the perfect opportunity to fix what I broke. But time doesn't wait for guilt to get its act together. The truth is, I didn't know how to show up. I knew how to earn. I knew how to fix problems on a job site, lead teams, negotiate permits, but I didn't know how to show up for a scraped knee or a broken heart. I was a builder of things, not of people. And that, I see now, was my greatest failure. When I retired last year, the silence of the house became unbearable. Every morning felt like a reminder of what I'd missed. I started watching the mail with childlike anticipation, hoping maybe, just maybe, Emily would reach out. A postcard, a text, a cry for help I could finally answer. But nothing came. Until last week, a mutual friend, an old neighbor from Denver, mentioned in passing that Emily's daughter, my granddaughter, was turning 5. There'd be a small birthday party, balloons, cake, friends, a chance for family, a chance for me. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't want to give her the opportunity to say no before I'd even tried. I just packed a bag, placed the old teddy bear I'd kept for 3 decades into a gift box, and got in the car. That bear had been Emily's favorite once. She named it Mr. Buttons. I found it in a trunk when I moved into this house, wrapped in one of her old baby blankets. I'd held on to it like some men hold on to medals or letters from war, proof that once I had mattered to someone. I didn't expect forgiveness. I wasn't sure I deserved it, but I needed to try. For her, for the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders, and for the little girl I'd never even met. For the past 15 years, I've tried to be present without being a burden. It's a delicate line to walk, especially when you know your absence already did the damage. I mailed birthday cards every year like clockwork, always on time, always with a handwritten note. The handwriting changed over time, shakier, more careful, but the message remained the same. Thinking of you. Love, Dad. Most of them were never acknowledged. One year, I sent a silver necklace engraved with, "To my daughter, my heart always." It was returned unopened. The package had been marked, "Refused, returned to sender." I stared at that label for an hour before tossing it in the fireplace. Still, I didn't stop. I sent flowers for her graduation. Lilies, her mother's favorite. I wasn't invited to the ceremony, but I watched the university's live stream, alone in my living room, hands gripping the armrest of my recliner like it could somehow hold me together. She looked so proud, so poised, so grown, and I was nowhere near her. After her wedding, which I only found out about through a tagged photo online, I sent a letter. Not a formal one, just a plain note card with shaky words. "You look beautiful. I hope he treats you right. Love always, Dad." I never got a reply. Still, I kept trying. 3 years ago, I sent her and her daughter a pair of tickets to Disneyland. I figured it was neutral, fun, a way for them to make memories. I even prepaid for the hotel. I included a note. "You deserve joy. Maybe one day I can be part of it." No response? No confirmation? I don't even know if they went. I called, left voicemails. "Hi, Emily. I just wanted to say hi. No pressure to call back. Just letting you know I'm here." Click. Next month. "It's Dad. Hope you and the little one are well." Click. Silence. Eventually, I stopped calling. Not because I stopped caring, but because I didn't want her to feel cornered. I began to accept the idea that maybe my place was only on the periphery of her life. Never center stage, just a background shadow trying not to intrude. I took to writing letters I never sent. Dozens of them. Some were full of regret, others full of stories. I wrote about my day, the weather, a good movie I'd seen, a book I thought she'd like. They filled a drawer in my desk labeled Emily Unsent. That drawer became both a graveyard and a time capsule, proof that I hadn't stopped talking to her, even when she stopped hearing me. Sometimes I'd imagine her reading them years later, maybe after I was gone. Maybe when she was cleaning out the house and found them tucked away. Maybe then she'd understand. Maybe then she'd know I tried. What hurts most is that I don't blame her. I wouldn't have forgiven me either. I wasn't the dad she needed when she needed him. I was a name on a check, a voice that came through on birthdays and holidays. I gave her money, but not memories. Advice, but not affection. I provided, but I wasn't present. Still, there's a stubborn part of me, some battered remnant of fatherhood that wouldn't let go. That part believed that one day, if I just kept showing up in small ways, she might let me show up in a big one. So, when I heard about her daughter's birthday, something in me surged. Maybe it was hope, maybe desperation, maybe just the quiet ache of a man running out of time. But I packed that teddy bear, that silly, beat-up toy from decades ago, and I wrapped it with trembling hands. I included a note. This was yours. Now maybe it can be hers. Love, Grandpa, if she'll have me. That was the first time I ever referred to myself as Grandpa. I didn't know if it was presumptuous. I just knew it was honest. And sometimes, honesty is all a man has left. It was a Thursday morning when I heard the news. A friend of mine, Linda, who still lived near Denver, mentioned it during one of our occasional calls. Emily's little girl is turning 5 next week, she said casually, as if she didn't just crack something open inside me. 5? I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. Yeah, there's going to be a party, I think. Just some friends and family at their place in Littleton. I'm not sure well, I don't know if you were invited. I wasn't. Of course I wasn't. But something about that number, 5, clawed at me. Emily had been 5 when I gave her the teddy bear. I remembered the way she clutched it during thunderstorms, how she'd whisper secrets into its stitched ear. That bear had traveled with her everywhere until the divorce, when it somehow ended up back in my hands. I found it in a moving box years later, pressed between old sweaters and a baby blanket. I never threw it out. I walked over to my closet and opened the trunk at the bottom. Inside, the bear was still there. Faded brown fur, button eyes slightly crooked, the bow tie frayed. Mr. Buttons. That's what Emily had called him. I held it for a long time. Then, with a kind of quiet certainty, I decided I was going to Colorado. It wasn't about crashing a birthday party. It wasn't about confrontation or reclaiming lost years. It was about showing up, just once. Not as a ghost, but as a man, as a father, as a grandfather. I didn't call. I didn't email. I knew if I asked, she'd say no. Or worse, she wouldn't respond at all. Instead, I packed a bag with 2 changes of clothes, a shaving kit, and the bear, carefully wrapped in gold paper with a white satin ribbon. I slid a small card under the bow. On it, I wrote, "Once yours, now hers. Love, Grandpa, if I may." I left at dawn the next morning. The drive from Cheyenne to Littleton is just over 300 miles. I've made that drive before. Once, years ago, when Emily had surgery and Sharon didn't tell me until it was over. I remember driving the whole stretch in a storm, arriving only to be told I wasn't needed. I slept in my car that night, just outside the hospital. This time, the skies were clear, but my heart was heavy. Every mile marker felt like a countdown. I passed wheat fields, gas stations, diners that hadn't changed in 30 years. The farther I drove, the younger my memories felt. Emily at 5, riding on my shoulders. Emily at 9, refusing to speak to me during a tense holiday visit. Emily at 17, standing across a courtroom as I signed custody papers I didn't know how to fight. I stopped once, for gas and coffee. While I waited in line, I saw a man with a little girl on his shoulders, both laughing, sharing a milkshake. I had to turn away. Some wounds are so deep they feel physical. Back in the car, I glanced at the gift beside me. The bear's round head pressed against the box lid, like it too, was waiting for approval. I wondered what Emily would think if she saw it. Would she remember how she once refused to sleep without it? Would she tell her daughter who gave it to her? Or would she hide it away? I told myself I wasn't expecting anything. No welcome, no thank you, no hugs. But the truth is, I hoped. I hoped to see my granddaughter's face, even from a distance. I hoped, maybe, Emily would see me not as the man who left, but as the one who never stopped trying to come back. I wasn't chasing redemption anymore. I was just chasing a moment, a chance to be near. 300 miles, 6 hours, a lifetime, and I was almost there. I was 24 miles from Emily's house when my phone rang. The dashboard clock read 11:47 a.m. I remember it clearly because I'd just passed a green highway sign that read Littleton, 26 miles. I was thinking about whether I should stop for gas now or after the party. Silly logistics, things that kept me from overthinking the rest. I didn't recognize the number. It was a local area code, Denver. My pulse quickened. My hands tightened on the wheel. I answered. Hello? There was a pause, the kind that lets your heart sprint ahead of your brain. Then her voice, Dad. My throat closed. It had been over 2 years since I'd heard her say that word out loud. Emily, I said, trying to keep my tone even, careful not to sound too eager. I'm almost there. Another pause. Then came the words that stopped everything. Dad, please, just send the gift. Don't come. I didn't understand at first. My brain didn't want to. I replayed the sentence in my head as though I'd misheard it, as if maybe she meant something else, something softer. I'm sorry, I asked. Her voice remained steady, neutral, not angry, not emotional, just final. I know you mean well. I know you drove a long way. But this party, it's for her. I don't want her confused or disappointed or asking questions I'm not ready to answer. I pulled off the highway, wheels crunching over gravel into a rest stop. I put the car in park and stared straight ahead. Emily, I began, my voice cracking. I didn't come to make things worse. I just wanted to see her. Just once. You don't have to talk to me. I'll stay outside. Dad, she cut in, firmer now. Please, this is not the time. I'm asking you to respect that. I looked down at the bear in the seat beside me, still wrapped, still waiting. She's 5, Emily, I whispered. Same age you were when I gave you Mr. Buttons. Silence. She deserves to know where she comes from. More silence. Then a breath. I could hear it. The kind of breath someone takes when they're trying not to cry, or not to care. I'm sorry, she said finally. But no, please don't come. Goodbye. The line went dead. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just sat there. Hand still holding the phone, my other gripping the wheel, like it was the only thing keeping me upright. I don't know how long I sat like that. Long enough for a truck to pull in, park, and leave again. The air inside the car felt heavier. I turned off the engine and rested my forehead against the steering wheel. What had I expected? A welcome banner? An apology? A second chance? Gift wrapped in balloons and frosting? No, not really. But I'd hoped for something. A glimpse, a smile, a crack in the door. Instead, I got the same thing I'd been getting for 30 years. A wall. I thought about turning around. I imagined the drive back. The same roads, the same towns, only darker this time. Each mile, not a journey toward hope, but a retreat into shame. But I couldn't do it. Not yet. I looked at the gift box again. That dumb bear. Its button eyes staring up at me like it understood the whole damn situation. I opened the glove compartment and pulled out the handwritten card I'd placed under the ribbon. I read the words aloud, to no one. Once yours, now hers. Love, Grandpa, if I may. If I may. Apparently I may not. I folded the card and put it back. I sat in silence, the ticking of the cooling engine the only sound around me. For years, I'd lived with the guilt of absence. Now, I was living with the pain of presence, being here, being willing, and still not being wanted. I closed my eyes, and then I started the car again. The road ahead was a blur, a straight stretch of asphalt cutting through brown prairie and cloudless sky, but I barely saw any of it. My hands stayed on the wheel, my eyes on the road. But in my mind, I was 1,000 miles and 30 years away. The first memory came suddenly. Emily at 18, standing on the school steps in her graduation gown, mortarboard crooked on her head, gold honor cords draped around her shoulders. I wasn't there. I'd planned to be. I had circled the date on my calendar for months, booked a hotel in town, bought a new suit. But the day before, a landslide hit a project site in Idaho. 3 workers were injured. I got the call, packed my bags, and boarded a red-eye without thinking twice. I didn't even call her until 2 days later. "I'm proud of you," I had said over the phone. She didn't answer. I don't know if she ever forgave me for that. I don't think I ever truly asked her to. Another memory crept in. Emily, age 5, standing behind the classroom window on her first day of kindergarten, wearing a red backpack that was almost too big for her shoulders. I had promised Sharon I'd come. Promised Emily too. But I was late. Again. When I got there, class had already started. I stood outside the glass, watching my daughter sit cross-legged on the carpet, lip trembling, looking toward the door, as if still hoping I might walk in. I didn't. I couldn't. I remember standing there, paralyzed. I told myself I didn't want to cause a scene, didn't want to distract her. But the truth is, I was ashamed. Ashamed to be the man who couldn't even make it on time for his own child's first day of school. So I turned around and walked back to the parking lot. That moment haunted me more than most. Because deep down, I knew she saw me through the window, and that she watched me walk away. So many of my regrets aren't about what I did, but what I didn't do. I didn't show up to her dance recital when she was 7 because of a conference in Chicago. I didn't come to her 10th birthday party because of a client pitch that could make or break the firm. I didn't fly back for her appendectomy when she was 12, though I called, sent flowers, and signed the hospital release forms from afar. I was always there in theory, rarely in person. I remember one Christmas, after the divorce, when I tried to make up for the distance with gifts. I bought her a telescope, a bike, and a walkie-talkie set, one for her, one for me. "So we can talk even when I'm not around," I joked. She didn't laugh. That night, I watched her ride the bike alone in the driveway while I took a client call from the porch. I thought I could balance both, be a provider and a father. A man who delivered on every deadline and still had room for bedtime stories. But the scales were never even, and every time I dropped the ball, I told myself I'd make it up to her later. There's always time, I used to think, until one day there isn't. I don't remember the last time Emily called me daddy. I don't remember the last time she reached for my hand. I don't remember when I stopped being her hero and became a stranger with the same last name. But I remember the silence that followed, the long gaps between holidays, the birthdays that went unanswered, the wedding I wasn't invited to, the voicemail I left on her wedding day, telling her I loved her, even if I wasn't there to walk her down the aisle. Now, here I was, less than 25 miles from her house, and it felt farther than ever. I pulled into another turnout off the highway, killed the engine, and sat back in the seat. The bear still sat beside me, wrapped and waiting, like a time capsule from a version of me I wish I'd been. I reached over and touched the ribbon. The gift felt heavier now, burdened by all the moments it was meant to make up for. But no stuffed animal could erase abandonment. No gesture, no matter how well-meaning, could rewrite history. Still, the memories wouldn't stop. And neither would the ache they carried. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let them come. Because if I couldn't go back and be there for her when it mattered, maybe I could at least remember enough to never forget how much I'd lost. I don't remember turning the ignition back on. I just remember the quiet hum of the engine, the way my hands found the wheel again, like muscle memory. The sun had shifted higher in the sky, the early afternoon light casting long shadows across the prairie. I didn't check the map. I didn't need to. I knew the way. The 24 miles to Littleton felt longer than the previous 276. Every sign, every turnoff, every song on the radio was just background noise to the thoughts playing in my head. I should have turned around. I should have respected her wishes. I should have accepted that maybe this was never mine to fix. But I kept driving, not out of defiance, not even out of hope anymore. I drove because something inside me refused to let the story end with a phone call. Emily had drawn a line. I knew that, but I wasn't crossing it. Not really. I wouldn't ring the doorbell. I wouldn't demand anything. I just wanted to see her, to see the little girl she'd raised, the one who shared half my blood, but none of my memories. The GPS led me through a neighborhood of modest houses, tree-lined streets, and minivans parked in driveways. I slowed as I turned onto her block. Balloons were tied to the mailbox out front, pink and silver, fluttering in the breeze. A few cars lined the curb. Laughter echoed faintly from the backyard. I parked 2 houses down, cut the engine, and sat for a moment. My heart pounded like it was trying to escape my chest. I stepped out of the car. The box with the bear stayed behind. It wasn't time for that yet. I walked slowly along the sidewalk, the gravel crunching underfoot. When I reached the edge of her lawn, I paused. From where I stood, I could just make out the top of a bounce house in the backyard, the sound of children shouting, music playing, a blender whirring inside, the buzz of life, familiar and foreign all at once. I moved to the side of the house, careful to stay behind the wooden fence that surrounded the yard. There was a gap between the slats, just wide enough, and then I saw her. She was wearing a lavender dress, her brown curls bouncing as she ran across the grass, chasing bubbles with 2 other kids. Her laughter rang out, clear and bright. She was beautiful. My granddaughter. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. She had Emily's eyes, those same curious, almond-shaped eyes that used to search for me at airports, at doorways, at the end of every broken promise. She had my mother's chin. Her smile was all her own. She couldn't have known who I was. I was just a shadow on the other side of a fence, but I knew her. I had known her before she was born, before she had a name. I had imagined this moment in dreams and in letters I never sent. And now, here she was. I felt my knees weaken, and I gripped the fence to steady myself. I didn't cry. Not yet. But something inside me cracked open. A dam I had kept sealed for far too long. She ran toward the table, grabbed a juice box, then skipped over to a woman standing near the patio. Emily. She looked older, of course, but not much had changed. Her posture was still straight, confident. She was laughing at something one of the moms said. For a second, she looked like the little girl I used to read bedtime stories to. Then she turned, and her eyes swept over the yard. They passed over the fence, and for the briefest of seconds, they landed on me. She didn't flinch, didn't move. Her face didn't register shock or anger, just stillness, recognition. Then she turned back to her guests, saying nothing. That was all. I stood there a few more minutes, watching from my borrowed space behind the fence. I didn't move closer. I didn't wave. I just memorized every detail. The way her daughter moved. The way Emily brushed a strand of hair from her face. The sound of life I had no claim to. Then I turned around. I walked back to the car, sat in the driver's seat, and stared straight ahead. I hadn't been invited. I hadn't been wanted. But I had come. And I had seen her. That, for now, would have to be enough. I hadn't planned on being seen. I thought I could watch from the edge of the world, hidden behind that fence, just long enough to breathe in a moment I'd been denied for years. But fate has a way of calling out even those who try their best to disappear. I'd turned to leave. I swear I had. But just as I reached the sidewalk, I heard a voice behind me, tight, clipped, unmistakably hers. Dad. I froze. Emily stood at the corner of the house, arms folded, her body angled slightly to block the view from the yard. She wasn't shouting. In fact, her voice was almost too calm, but there was something behind it. Tension stretched thin. "What are you doing here?" she asked. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I felt like a child caught where he shouldn't be, fumbling for an explanation that wouldn't sound pathetic. I just wanted to see her, I managed finally. From a distance, that's all. Her jaw tightened. "You're making this harder, Dad," she said, her tone quieter now, but laced with frustration. "I told you not to come." "I stayed outside," I said. "I didn't approach. I didn't say a word to anyone. You shouldn't be here." A few parents had turned their heads. I could feel their eyes on us, curiosity simmering just beneath their polite restraint. A woman in a floral blouse gave Emily a questioning glance from the patio. A man near the grill paused mid-flip, spatula frozen in the air. Shame crept over me like a slow flood. My ears burned. My chest felt hollow. "I wasn't trying to cause trouble," I said. I've never seen her in person before. I thought maybe—" "You thought what?" she said, eyes narrowing slightly. "That this would be some big reunion moment? That you'd stand there long enough and I'd just forget everything?" "No," I said, quickly. "God, no. I didn't expect anything. I didn't come to make you forgive me. I came to witness something good, that's all." Emily took a step closer, lowering her voice even further. "I spent weeks preparing for today," she said, making sure everything was perfect for her. "And now I'm looking over my shoulder every 5 minutes, wondering if people are whispering about the strange man standing by the fence." I looked down, my hands tightening into fists at my sides. "I'm sorry," I said. she sighed, a long, tired sound. You showing up like this, it's not kind. It's not romantic or redemptive. It's just hard. I nodded. What else could I do? She looks like you, I said gently. Those eyes. I recognized them before I recognized anything else. For a moment, something flickered in her face. Maybe hesitation, maybe hurt. But it was gone before I could name it. I need you to leave, she said. I nodded again. Emily turned. But before she walked away, she said one last thing. You left when I needed you. Please don't show up now just because it's easier for you. And then she was gone. I stood alone, the sun beating down, my reflection in the car window looking older than I felt moments ago. The house behind me buzzed with music, laughter, celebration. I had no place in it. I got in the car, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb slowly, careful not to look back. But even with my eyes on the road, I could still hear her voice. You're making this harder, Dad. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. That somehow made it worse. I didn't drive far. I pulled into the parking lot of a grocery store 3 blocks away, parked under a fading tree, and let the engine idle for a minute before shutting it off. The air inside the car had turned stifling, but I couldn't bring myself to open the window. The weight of the conversation with Emily, her words, her tone, her eyes, pressed down on me like a lead blanket. You left when I needed you. The sentence echoed, louder than anything else she'd said. And worse, it wasn't entirely wrong. But it wasn't entirely true either, if only she knew. I leaned my head back against the seat and stared at the ceiling. The years unraveled in my mind like an old film reel. Moments I had stored in dusty boxes and buried under guilt came rushing forward. After the divorce, Sharon made it clear. She wanted full custody, no negotiation. I didn't fight her. Not then. I thought agreeing would preserve peace, avoid turning Emily's life into a courtroom drama. I believed I could still be present, still visit, still call, still matter. But Sharon changed the rules the moment the ink dried. Phone calls went unanswered. Letters came back unopened. Visits were canceled last minute, always with a different excuse. She's sick. She has school. She's at a sleepover. Eventually, the cancellations stopped needing explanations. They just happened. Silence became the new answer. I remember the night I hired a lawyer, a young man, fresh out of law school, full of righteous energy. You have a case, he said. This is parental alienation. I paid the retainer, started gathering documents, logged every missed visit, every blocked call. But then, one night, I sat across from him as he laid out the strategy. File for joint custody, subpoena school records, force mediation. And if Sharon resists? I asked. She will, he said. That's the point. We push until the court sees she's being unreasonable. I nodded slowly, then asked the one question I couldn't shake. And what about Emily? What happens to her in all this? He hesitated. She'll be involved, yes. She may need to speak with a family therapist. A judge might want to hear from her directly, depending on her age. She was 8. I fired him the next day. I couldn't do it. I couldn't drag her into a legal battle, make her choose sides, poison her childhood with court dates and counselors. I couldn't be the reason her world split even further. So I let go. At least, that's what I told myself. In reality, I stepped back because I thought love meant protecting her, even if that meant losing her. But I never stopped writing. Every month I wrote her letters. I kept them in a leather-bound journal. Small pages filled with stories, updates, apologies. Today I fixed a broken bridge, one began, but I still don't know how to fix us. Another read, I passed your old school today. I wonder if you still like mint chocolate chip. I never mailed them. I didn't have the address, but I wrote them anyway. Because I had to believe that someday she'd know. That day hadn't come yet, but someone else had seen it. Someone I never expected. I was still in the parking lot when there was a tap on the driver's side window. I startled, turned, and blinked at the figure standing there. It was her mother-in-law, Emily's husband's mother. I rolled the window down slowly. "Can I sit?" she asked. I nodded. She climbed into the passenger seat, folding her hands in her lap like we were old friends. She didn't speak right away. Neither did I. Finally, she looked over. "I told her you wouldn't show up," she said. "Told her you were all talk." I didn't respond. She sighed. "I used to tell her you weren't good enough. That if you really cared, you'd have fought harder. Come sooner. I thought I was protecting her." She paused. But today, I saw something else. I saw a man who drove 300 miles and stood in the sun just to glimpse his granddaughter. That's not nothing. I swallowed hard. "She hates me," I said. "No," the woman replied. "She doesn't know what to do with you. That's different." I turned to her. She told me to leave. "I know," she said. "And maybe you should, for now. But don't let that stop you." She reached into her purse and pulled out a slip of paper. "She won't give you her address. But this is where she drops the little one off for dance class every Tuesday, 4:30. She placed it on the dashboard, then opened the door. "Don't give up on her, Robert. Just don't push either." And then she was gone. For a long time, I sat in the quiet. Then I reached for the slip of paper. For the first time all day, I let myself hope. I didn't drive away immediately. After she left the passenger seat, Emily's mother-in-law, I just sat there. The slip of paper she gave me sat on the dashboard like a lifeline. Small, simple, but impossibly heavy. I stared at it until the letters blurred, my eyes dry and burning. Dance studio, Tuesdays, 4:30. I ran a hand through my hair, felt the roughness of my scalp, the way age had settled in without my consent. I wasn't sure if what I felt was relief or rage, or maybe both. That woman, who once said I'd never be enough, had watched me for mere minutes and seen something my daughter hadn't in 30 years. What did that say about me? About Emily? About the damage done in silence? "I told her you'd never be enough," she had whispered. I was wrong. 6 words. That's all it took. They didn't feel like forgiveness. They felt like a belated confession. A half admission that years of distrust had been passed down like family heirlooms. Embedded in Emily before she could ever judge me for herself, and I had let it happen. I thought walking away would protect her. I thought silence would do less harm than conflict. But now I saw it clearly. In trying not to hurt her, I had let others write the story of who I was. And they had written me as a villain. My hands clenched around the steering wheel. My vision narrowed, tunneled into a single pulsing point in my chest. The kind of pressure that builds over decades, pressing into your ribs until you forget what it's like to breathe without guilt. All the letters I'd written, all the birthdays I'd missed, all the effort twisted into evidence against me. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel. Once, twice, The horn blared in response, sharp and sudden, startling a woman walking across the parking lot. She looked over. I turned away. What right did they have? To decide who I was? What kind of father I'd been? What kind of grandfather I was allowed to be? I had failed. Yes. I had walked away when I should have stayed. I had buried myself in work, in distraction, in cowardice. I had done damage. But I had also tried. Again and again, quietly, respectfully, patiently. And now, even that patience was used against me. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against the wheel. The tremor in my chest wasn't sadness anymore. It was something else. Sharper, more focused. For years, I had accepted the story they'd told about me. Today, that story broke. Because now I knew the truth. I wasn't hated for what I'd done. I was erased for what I didn't fight for. And that was going to change. I didn't need to barge into their lives. I didn't need a dramatic confrontation or a viral reunion. But I wasn't going to disappear again. No more watching from fences. No more silence passed off as respect. If Emily wanted space, I'd give it. But I would be present, visible, and steady. Not in the center of her world, but on the edges, waiting, patient, and undeniable. That little girl in the lavender dress didn't know me yet. But someday, she would. Someday, she'd hear the real version. The one who drove 300 miles with nothing but a stuffed bear and a sliver of hope. The one who stood outside the party, not because he was uninvited, but because he still respected the door that wouldn't open. And maybe, just maybe, someday she'd open it herself. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. My knuckles stung from hitting the wheel, but I welcomed the sensation. Pain was honest, clean. I picked up the slip of paper. Tuesday, 4:30. I looked at the time. Still a few hours until sunset. There was a motel 2 miles away. Nothing fancy, just a roadside inn with cracked ice machines and worn carpeting. But it had beds and a roof, and enough quiet for what I needed next. I would stay the night, not because I expected anything to change, but because something inside me already had. The motel room smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet, the kind of place where the curtains never quite close, and the TV remote has sticky buttons. I didn't mind. I wasn't here for comfort. I set the gift on the small desk beneath the window. The same gift that had sat beside me for the entire drive, wrapped carefully in gold paper, its ribbon still neatly tied. I hadn't planned to deliver it anymore, not after what Emily said. But now, sitting here in this dim room, with the AC rattling in the wall, I knew I couldn't take it back with me. Not because I was giving up, because it wasn't mine to hold anymore. That bear belonged to a little girl, and the photo inside, that moment captured long before bitterness took root, that belonged to both of them. I didn't want to leave it on their porch. It felt wrong, like some unwanted package they could discard without ever looking inside. I wanted to make sure it got to the right hands, even if those hands were tiny and sticky with birthday cake. So I waited until just after 6. The party would be winding down. Kids growing tired, parents rounding them up. That chaotic lull when attention scattered just enough. I drove back, parking a little further down this time, near the end of the block. I spotted a boy riding his scooter up and down the sidewalk, maybe 10 years old, red helmet askew on his head. He looked bored. I stepped out of the car with the box in my arms. "Hey, buddy," I called gently. He slowed, wary but curious. "Do you live around here?" He nodded. "You know the party going on over there?" I pointed toward Emily's yard. Yeah, he said. That's my friend Lily's house. Lily, I repeated, feeling the name settle into my chest. She's turning 5 today, right? Uh-huh. I crouched slightly, careful not to spook him. I have a gift for her, I said. Would you be willing to give it to her for me? Just hand it to her or her mom. No need to say anything else. He looked at the box, curious. What's in it? A bear, I said. A special one. He shrugged. Okay. I handed it over, along with a folded note tucked beneath the ribbon. Thank you, I said. He nodded, then kicked his scooter toward the house. I watched from the sidewalk, close enough to see, far enough to stay invisible. The boy entered through the side gate. I saw him walk up to Emily, who was kneeling beside a cooler. He handed her the gift. She looked confused at first, asked something. The boy shrugged. Then, without ceremony, he zipped away, already forgetting the exchange. Emily stared at the box. She didn't open it immediately. She held it in her hands for a long moment, then walked over to where Lily was sitting on a picnic blanket, surrounded by tissue paper and ribbon remnants. She knelt again and presented the box. Lily's small hands untied the ribbon with surprising patience. She peeled back the gold paper, opened the lid. I couldn't hear anything from where I stood, but I saw the way her fingers reached into the tissue and pulled out the bear. Mr. Buttons. She held it up with delight, then turned it around, inspecting it like a treasure from another world. But it wasn't just the bear. Emily reached into the box and found the photo. She froze. It was an old Polaroid, slightly faded, color softened by time. Emily at 5, sitting in my lap, her arms around my neck, her face buried in my shoulder. I was laughing. She was smiling. Pure joy. No weight between us. No years. Just a father and daughter caught in a rare, perfect moment. I had tucked it behind the bear's ear before wrapping the box. I hadn't even planned to include it. But at the last minute, it felt right. From my distance, I saw Emily stare at it longer than I expected. Then Lily spoke, her mouth moving, eyes wide. She held up the photo, pointed at it, and asked the question that broke the world open. Mommy, who's this? Emily didn't answer right away. Her eyes remained fixed on the image, her mouth slightly open. Her hand rested gently on her daughter's back. Then slowly, she whispered something I couldn't hear. Lily looked back at the bear, then at the photo, then at her mother again. I didn't stay. I had seen enough. As I walked back to my car, my chest felt strange, not tight, not heavy. Something else. Lighter. Like the weight of 3 decades had shifted, just slightly, to a place I could carry it. I had just turned the ignition when I saw her in the side mirror. Emily. She was walking briskly down the sidewalk, the bear cradled in one arm, the photograph still clutched in her hand. Her dress fluttered in the breeze, her sandals clicking softly against the pavement. There was no hesitation in her step, but no fury either, just quiet purpose. I killed the engine. When she reached my window, I rolled it down halfway before stepping out. The bear looked small against her chest. The same bear I'd once pulled off a high shelf in a dusty toy store because she had screamed at the sight of it. Now it was back in her arms. 30 years later. She didn't speak right away. The street was quiet. The distant hum of a lawnmower, the occasional chirp of a bird, a child's laughter far off in the backyard. It all faded beneath the weight of the silence between us. Emily looked at the bear, then at me. You kept this, she said, her voice low but steady. For over 30 years? I nodded. She held up the photo. And this? I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The questions weren't about the objects. They were about time, about memory, about everything we had lost, and what little might be reclaimed. She looked down at the image again, her thumb tracing its edge. I don't remember this day, she said, but I look happy. You were, I said finally. We stood in silence for a while longer. I watched her eyes move from the photo to the bear, then to the houses across the street, as if she were searching for something that could explain how we'd ended up here. Two people who used to be family, now little more than familiar strangers. She spoke again. You know, I always told myself I didn't need to know why you left. I told myself I didn't care. I waited. But then, Lily asked who you were, and for the first time, I realized I didn't have an answer that didn't hurt. She looked up at me then. I don't know what kind of man you were back then. I only know the holes you left. I tried, I said. The words came out thinner than I meant. Maybe not in the right ways, or at the right time, but I never stopped trying. I know, she said softly. I just didn't want to believe it. I swallowed hard, blinking back a sting behind my eyes. I never blamed you for hating me, I said. I never hated you, she said, almost too quickly. I just didn't know how to let you in again, not without reopening everything I spent years trying to bury. She paused. I used to think that if I kept Lily away from you, I was protecting her. But maybe I was just protecting myself. The wind picked up slightly. The bear's ribbon fluttered against her arm. She asked who you were, Emily repeated, looking at the photo again. I told her you were someone I used to know. That hurt, but not as much as it might have yesterday. Is that who I am? I asked. Emily looked at me, really looked. And for a moment, she didn't seem like a woman in control, like the mother, the professional, the person who'd kept me at arm's length for so long. She just looked like the little girl in that photo. Older now, guarded, but still somewhere inside, wanting something she couldn't quite name. No, she said finally, but I don't know who you are now either. That's fair. I guess, she added, her voice quieter now. We'd have to start over. I'd like that, I said. Another silence. Then she stepped closer, holding out the bear. I think she should have it, she said. She loved it. I didn't reach for it. I just nodded. I meant for her to, I said. It was never really mine, just something I was holding on to. Emily looked at the photo again. She looks just like me. She is you, I said. Every time she laughs, every time she looks up with those wide eyes, I see you, and I remember everything I missed. We both knew there were no words to fix it, no sentence that could undo decades of silence, missteps, and misunderstanding. But this moment, it wasn't a fix. It was a beginning. Tears welled in her eyes, and she didn't blink them away. I didn't either. Neither of us reached out. Neither of us said we were sorry again. But both of us cried. And for the first time in 30 years, it didn't feel like weakness. It felt like release. Emily sat on the hood of my car, legs crossed at the ankles, the bear resting in her lap. The sun had dipped low behind the rooftops, casting a golden glow that softened the lines in her face and gave her hair the same amber hue I remembered from her childhood. For a long time, we didn't speak. We didn't need to. There was comfort in the silence. Like both of us, were afraid that words might break whatever fragile thread had finally formed between us. Then quietly, she said, I didn't keep you away because I hated you. I turned to look at her. She was staring straight ahead, eyes fixed on nothing, voice steady but raw. I was afraid, she continued. Afraid that if I let you into Lily's life, she'd feel what I felt growing up. Those long stretches of nothing. Missed birthdays, the quiet phone, the kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room, it fills you. I didn't interrupt. My chest tightened, but I let her speak. I've spent years telling myself I was fine, she said, that it didn't matter, that I didn't need you. But the truth is, I never stopped feeling that hole. And when Lily was born, it was like, suddenly, I could see how small I must have been when it all happened, how easily breakable. Her voice cracked just slightly, but she caught it. I didn't want her to wait at a window. I didn't want her to wonder why Grandpa never called or never came. I didn't want her to think she wasn't enough to make someone stay. I felt my heart splinter in places I didn't know still existed. I thought, she continued, that by keeping her away, I was sparing her. But lately, I've started wondering if I was just letting my own fear parent her instead of me. She looked down at the bear in her lap, then traced her fingers over the photo still tucked into its arm. She's been asking about family more, she said, about where she came from. I always told her simple answers, surface stuff, but that picture, it shook something loose. Emily finally turned to me, her eyes glossy. She looked at it and said, Mommy, you look happy there. And I realized I didn't remember that version of you. Not really. Not until I saw your face again. I swallowed hard, then spoke, careful and quiet. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought giving space was the least harmful thing I could do. I thought absence would be quieter than conflict. It was, she said, but it was also louder than you think. The wind shifted, carrying the faint sounds of the backyard behind us. Children still playing, music echoing in small waves. But we stayed where we were. Emily took a deep breath. When I saw Lily holding that bear, clutching it like it was hers before she even understood it, I felt something unlock, something old. I remembered what it felt like to be held by someone who made the world quieter, even if it didn't last. She hesitated, then added, and I realized I've been holding you to a memory of pain instead of the possibility that you might have changed. I turned to her fully now, the heaviness of the moment settling into my limbs like gravity. I have changed, I said. Maybe not fast enough, maybe not when it mattered most, but I have. I can't fix the past, but I want to show up now, even if it's just from the bleachers at a dance recital, even if it's just for a birthday card she'll open without knowing what it took for me to write it. Emily smiled faintly. I think she'd like that. Another pause, a long one, the kind that asks for courage. Then she said, I can't promise this will be easy. I still have scars, and I still get angry. But if you're willing to move forward without rushing it, without trying to rewrite everything, I'm willing to try. My voice caught when I answered. I've been waiting 30 years for the chance to earn that. She stood, the bear still in her arms. Then, in a move so subtle I nearly missed it, she stepped closer, just enough for her shoulder to brush mine. She's got ballet class on Tuesdays, she said. You want to come with us next week? I turned to her. I'd love to. And just like that, something broke open. Not with fanfare. Not with fireworks. Just a soft, steady shift in the air between us. A door that had stayed shut for decades finally cracked open, just wide enough for a man like me to step through. The next time I pulled onto Emily's street, it was Tuesday afternoon. I parked at the curb just behind her SUV. The nerves that used to rattle in my stomach had quieted into something else, steady, cautious anticipation. I held a small bouquet of daisies in one hand, and in my jacket pocket was a card I'd written the night before. To Lily, it read, from Grandpa, who's still learning how to show up. The front door opened before I even reached the porch. Lily came bouncing down the steps, her hair tied in 2 short braids, a pink backpack bouncing on her shoulders. She paused when she saw me, then looked back at Emily, who stood behind her. Emily nodded. "It's okay, sweetie," she said. "This is my dad, your grandpa." Lily looked up at me, curious more than shy. "You drove a really long way, didn't you?" "I did," I said, smiling. 300 miles. She blinked. "That's more than 5. Much more." She held out her hand. "I like your flowers." I handed them to her, and she took them like she was accepting treasure. Emily stepped aside, holding the door open. I hesitated for just a moment, out of habit, out of memory, then stepped inside. It smelled like vanilla and crayons. The living room was filled with toys, half-finished coloring pages, and a pair of ballet shoes resting near the couch. It wasn't the kind of house that tried to be perfect. It was lived in. It was real. Emily led me to the dining room where a plate was already set for me. "We didn't know what you liked," she said, a little awkward. "So we made spaghetti." "My favorite," I said, and it wasn't a lie. Dinner was simple. No grand speeches, no declarations. Lily talked about her class and her friend, who wore mismatched socks every day. Emily asked about the drive and my little house in Wyoming. I told her about the squirrel that had taken up residence in my garage, how it seemed to have more personality than some of my old coworkers. We laughed, not loud, not long, but we laughed. And when dessert came, store-bought cupcakes with too much frosting, Lily climbed into my lap like she'd done it 100 times before. Emily didn't stop her. "This is my grandpa," Lily told her cupcake. "He's really old but nice." I laughed again, this time with tears at the corners of my eyes, when the plates were cleared and the sun dipped low, casting warm shadows across the floor. Emily stood behind me, resting her hand gently on my shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up," she said. I looked up at her. "Thank you for letting me back in." She smiled, and for the first time in decades, I saw something in her expression I hadn't dared hope for. Peace. We sat for a while longer, the 3 of us, no longer divided by silence or memory. Just a family, finally sharing the same room. That night, I stayed on the living room couch. Emily offered the guest room, but I declined. The couch creaked when I sat down, the cushions worn and familiar in that way only a home with children could manage. I liked it that way. Lily had insisted on one more story before bed. Emily stood at the doorway, arms folded, watching with a small smile as I settled in beside Lily on the edge of her bed, a fairy tale book clutched in her hands. She chose a story about a lost knight who found his way home after wandering for years. The metaphors weren't subtle, but I didn't mind. As I read, Lily curled under her blanket, her head resting on her stuffed bear, Mr. Buttons, now slightly sticky with chocolate from earlier. Her eyes drooped as I reached the final page. The knight, though tired and worn from the road, finally saw the lights of the village he once called home. And though everything had changed, and he didn't know what tomorrow would bring, He knew one thing with all his heart. He was no longer alone. I closed the book gently. Lily blinked up at me, sleep fighting the pull of her lids. Was he scared? She asked. Yes, I said honestly. But brave people aren't brave because they're not scared. They're brave because they keep going anyway. She nodded, satisfied, and let her eyes close. I stayed there a moment longer, brushing a loose strand of hair from her forehead. Then, softly, I whispered, I'm not just your grandpa, Lily. I'm the man who waited 30 years for this moment. Her breathing slowed, deepened. I stood quietly, turning off the lamp. Outside her door, Emily waited. She didn't speak, but our eyes met, and in that silent glance, I felt something settle. An unspoken agreement, a shared understanding of what it took to reach this point. Later, back on the couch, I lay with one arm behind my head, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the lessons I'd learned, not just about fatherhood, but about grace, about how forgiveness isn't a switch, but a process. How sometimes the most courageous thing you can do isn't fighting to be heard, but staying long enough to be understood. I had come to this house hoping for a chance to fix things. What I received was something better, a chance to begin again. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but honestly. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel like a ghost wandering through someone else's life. I felt real, present, accounted for. And when morning came, I would still be here. Because family isn't about getting everything right. It's about showing up, even if it's late. Especially if it's late.